TFL EV is brought to you by Flow Charger, maker of reliable, high-quality charging stations for your electric vehicle.
Hey everybody, Tommy here with TFL EV, bringing you a fun video about one of the coolest cars of the year, one of the biggest surprises of the year that has a ton of great features and one pretty big drawback. I'm of course talking about the Kia EV6 GT, the performance variant of Kia's all-electric crossover. And in this video, we're going to take you on a full tour of the EV6 GT, take it on the road, let you know how it drives, and tell you whether or not you should buy it or not. So let's get into it. Now the EV6 has been around for some time now. It's of course based on the eGMP architecture within the Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis family. The same architecture that underpins the Ioniq 5 and the Genesis GV60, and the EV6 is one of the more striking cars on the road. So this is a design you either really like or really don't get, but it certainly is unique, especially the rear end here with this continuous light bar that extends across the entire width of the vehicle. This super raked rear window with no wiper on this vehicle. And of course, GT models here, we've got this big spoiler and a second wing down here as you move further back. GT badging on the rear, and no immediate taillights in the back until you realize there are these little strips that extend toward the rear fenders here. But a very cool looking car from the back. You of course have your charge port located here at the rear of the vehicle, and you gotta love this key. Check this thing out. Now, of course, Kia has been doing this for some time, but it's like a little fighter jet with a little detonator there for the lock button. Super cool key. Now, the GT model has a whopping 576 horsepower, 0 to 60 in the low 3-second range. And in order to harness all that power, the EV6 GT uses a different wheel and tire setup. So these are two 55 width tires, ZR21s. This is a Goodyear tire, by the way. Eagle F1, so it's a very high performance tire. And you can see the monster brake calipers hiding behind these black polished wheels. Green, of course, green is the GT color that Kia has decided. I'm not sure I love the green on the red, but it certainly is a distinct look. But one of the more interesting aspects of this car is how low it is. So they do call this an SUV because, of course, if you live in the US in 2023, you only buy SUVs. But really, in my opinion, it's much more of a hatchback. I mean, the roof of this car only comes up to right around shoulder height on me. This is not a very high riding vehicle. It's low slung, it's sporty, and it's a lot more in line with a car than an SUV. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Now, coming along to the front here, aggressive pointy headlights here with this cool daytime signature that makes its way around the leading edge there. Black front fascia, low, aggressive. You got a splitter here on the GT model. This thing screams performance. It's a little subtle, not quite as subtle as like a Model Y performance, but it certainly is not like an M3 where it's got wings and gills and fins all over. It's a very handsome, simple design, which I think is going to age beautifully. But let's step on the inside and talk about the interior. So you're greeted by these aggressive buckets, and this is the biggest change that the GT gets over the standard EV6 from an interior standpoint. Heavy bolstering on both edges of the seats, heavy bolstering on the bottom cushion, and then you've got this pass-through, which looks like it's intended for a harness, but integrated headrests on these one-piece bucket seats. Well, two-piece, you can of course recline them. And surprisingly enough, even though the MSRP in this car approaching 63 grand, you still have manual seats. So don't expect full electric seats even at this price point, but I suspect it does save some weight for Kia, which is what you want in a performance vehicle. The green trend continues throughout. Green along the seat bottom, green piping, green stitching on the steering wheel, a couple little green accents here and there. But in case you want to hop in and we'll talk about the interior. Now, firing up the EV6 GT, I always go and reach for the start button right here, as you'd expect in other vehicles. But the start button is actually right down here. Push it, and it's going to glide into life. And this interior is full of technology. So first of all, you've got this little touch sensitive paddle here, so you can cycle from various screens all via these little touch buttons. But what's interesting is to adjust the climate control, you have to select the little fan icon, and then it reconfigures itself as a climate panel. So now we have our dual zone automatic climate. But if you want to then adjust the radio, you want to go back here, you got your tune and volume knobs. You can, of course, do that on the steering wheel as well. But you can either have your radio panel or your climate panel, but not both at the same time. People complain about this. I personally don't, because if it means I can get a volume knob in 2023, I'm going to take that option because I am secretly an old man. So you can have climate, or you can have a tune and volume knob, which is a great thing. Screen here, the latest and greatest in Hyundai infotainment, works great. Pretty easy to use, pretty simple for the main menus. For example, like the radio tabs are all very straightforward, clear, crisp, concise. What's not so easy to use is some of the menus in this vehicle. And if we go into the EV page, the sheer number of options here is pretty overwhelming. So you have max charge limits for both DC and AC. You can change the AC charging current, which is great. You can change the battery condition mode. There's a utility mode, so if you're camping, it'll use a high voltage battery to power the electronics. There's a smart regen system, which you can link to the navigation route. You can choose different regen settings, not only here, but the primary regen settings here are on the steering wheel. You've got charge connector modes. You've got all sorts of things just for the EV setting side of the car, let alone the rest of the settings within the inside. So you can get really nerdy as to how you configure the EV6 to your exact kind of wants and needs, but it can be a little overwhelming when you're first setting the car up. But let's talk about the digital cluster here. Really cool screen, and it's actually very configurable. So you have these two bars which extend forward, similar to like the Ioniq 5, but it actually changes design when you go from eco mode to the normal mode to the sport mode. And then if I go into the GT mode, it's going to change once again, and we're going to get these green bars. That's going to be your high performance mode. Now, all the different drive modes are selected via the steering wheel here. In eco mode, it's really going to reduce the acceleration, really going to try to maximize the range. And then, of course, GT mode is going to give you the full beans, it's going to give you the maximum acceleration. So that's going to be the big rub on this car, though, the range. So EPA rated 206 miles on a single charge in this GT form. It's not great, considering we have like a 77 kilowatt hour battery. You'd expect it to be mid 200s, even low 300s, but 206, a lot less than this vehicle's chief competitor, the Model Y Performance. This also competes with the Mach-E GT, these high-performance electric crossovers. I'd like to see a little bit more range. I'm sure part of that is down to the high-performance motors. Part of it is down to the really big and chunky tires, which certainly add some more drag. But like a standard EV6, you're going to get, mid 200s all the way into the low 300s, depending on the configuration. Very well equipped in here, though. We've got heated seats, heated steering wheel, all done through there. We've got a full camera system. You can see that with the ability to see your car in a third-person point of view. So if you're parking up and you want to see where you are in relation to other cars, that is an option. But I think it's time, Case, we strap in and take the beast for a ride. Pricing, as I mentioned, $62,800 and some change. It's like $62,855 for this exact trim. So right in line with the pricing on like a Mustang Mach-E GT. Tesla Model Y Performance is in that $60,000 range as well. One thing I am really impressed with is how the character of the car can change dramatically based on the drive mode. So if you're just looking for a super chill car to drive around, right, you don't want that instant acceleration to throw you back, stick it in eco mode, right? And then when you go to accelerate full throttle, it kind of just progresses down the road. But then if you do want to scare your friends, put it in the GT mode, floor it, and you get that low 3-second 0 to 60 time. And the acceleration is marvelous. You always get a little bit of front wheel spin from my experience, and then it rockets you down the road. It's very impressive. It's got a little bit more force off the line, it feels like, than some of the Tesla products, like the Model Y Performances, which build into it just ever so gradually. This one and the Mach-E GT, they just go full banana right off the bat. Wheel spin, you're fighting for grip, and then you're just shooting down into the horizon. Now the steering, it's not my favorite steering in my opinion. It's a little bit too artificially heavy with not a lot of feedback. Of course, you can change that in your different drive modes. You also have a My mode that you can configure all that in. The ride quality is pretty good though. It's not too firm. It's not too soft. It feels sporty. It feels more performance oriented than a standard EV6, but it's not beating you up. Like some of the previous Model Y performances I felt like were a little bit too firm. This is still compliant. One thing I don't love is the headroom situation. So I am 6 feet tall here. I don't have a ton of headroom. Now, of course, I can jack my seat up, which will make it worse, but even on the full down position, I do, in every EV6 I feel this, but I feel that the cowl is just a little bit too close to my head. Now, of course, I could recline a little bit, go into the full gangster lean, but that doesn't feel super comfortable for me. And we also have a sunroof in this vehicle, but it is pretty small. It doesn't extend the full length, just a small glass roof there. It does open, which is a pro over some of this vehicle's competition. And then in terms of autonomous and safety technology, we do have adaptive cruise control, emergency braking, blind spot monitoring. We also have lane centering, which you can engage even on non-highways just at the push of a button there. I really find that the smart cruise control in Kias is very well programmed. It's not a full hands-off system. You still got to be alert, still got to be paying attention, but it does a great job of keeping you in the middle of the lane. Now, the paddle shifters on the Kia EV6 will change your different regen levels, all the way from level 0, where when you let off, it just coasts, to level 3, which is going to slow down quite a bit. And then there's even a max regen with iPedal that monitors the traffic in front of you, and if the traffic is slowing down faster than the car is slowing down, it'll actually apply more regen to match the deceleration rate, which is very cool. So lots of high technology in this car. So overall, I really do enjoy the Kia EV6 GT. You know, I think it's a very attractive car. I think it's a very fun car to drive. I think it looks great. We'll pull over here. I do want to check out the rear seats before we close this video up. We're going to see how that is if you have a family, if you're looking for a vehicle to you know, carry a lot of things in. It's definitely a low vehicle. It does have all-wheel drive, of course, dual motor setup, so it will get you through snow, but don't expect this to be a high-riding SUV that's going to take you up a snowy mountain, you know, in the dead of winter when there's 12 inches of snow, because it is pretty low slung. But if you want a high-performance SUV, there's very few cars, in my opinion, that match this vehicle in terms of the specialness factor and the fun-to-drive factor of that acceleration. It really is just addictive and can get you in a lot of trouble. Charge speeds, by the way, so 206 miles of range, not a ton, but they do predict 10 to 80% in about 18 minutes. This vehicle does have an 800-volt architecture. It's a charging beast. You can get well over 200 kilowatts of peak charge rate. So if you do happen to take a road trip every now and then, you're not going to go far in a single charge, but you will recharge quickly. All right, rear seat room and my driving position, leg room, incredible. Completely flat floor, no intrusions, nothing to kind of sour the leg experience here. Good knee room, headroom. It's okay. I'm right at the max here at 6 feet tall. I'm just barely scraping the top of my uncombed hair there. I love the suede, though. Even the rear seats get suede on the doors, which is a very premium looking touch. And then let's go ahead and check out the trunk. There is a tiny, tiny front trunk on this vehicle, but it's more of a frubby. I call it a front cubby. Oop, let me turn the car off. The front cubby is not much to see. It's just a little tiny bin. Okay. Here we go. Automatic liftgate, that glides open. You can see good room in the rear here. We don't have a spare tire in the back. Instead, we get a tire inflation kit and a little bit of additional storage. And then when we go to fold the seats, simple one pull of a lever and you get an almost completely flat load floor. So good cargo space in the EV6. Overall, a great car. Build quality feels quite good. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Big thank you to Case behind the camera, killing it as always. We'll see you in the next one.